Christianity assumes to be the outgrowth of what happened in the first century. And the later centuries just what evolved out of that. But that's ridiculous. There's no continuity with what happened in the first century, with the things that the Son was talking about, and what eventually happened. What eventually happened was predicted when this human animal which once was, and for a little short while was not, and would be again, when this unclean animal, the same thing that drove the Israelites to dismiss a God they couldn't see, when this unclean animal was put back into the temple, when what was happening in the first century faded away, dissolved away, and man's new thing happened. Christianity became something different than what it was in the first century, because the central figure, this Jesus, the one who Paul said was the Messiah, who was invisible and living in his body, had gone to God and become like God, so he could live in the bodies of those who were under this influence of this supernatural life. This force of power was turned into something that it wasn't. Turned into a god. And this became the figurehead of what became of the unclean animal taking the unclean animal and putting it back into the temple, which once was the place where the Holy One of Israel lived. The Father and Son lived in the bodies of those few who were under this influence, as he promised. And we don't know the extent of the supernatural thing that was started when this all happened. We don't understand what really was started by the Son, because it's unseen, and because we don't have any information about it, because the only information we have comes from man's world, comes from this institution that was created, that Christianity assumes was just a logical evolution of what happened in the first century, and so it assumes that this institution is this new thing that was created. But that's ridiculous, because it's not genuine. There's nothing genuine in Christianity. Christianity is the same as those Israelites who wanted to be able to see their God and hold their God and control it and make sure that when they woke up, it was still there. That's what Christianity became, an explanation. Here's your God. Here's your God. He's all explained in here. This is all you need. It's all you'll ever need. Christianity is just the answer of man saying, we don't want this God we can't control, because this God that had created this new thing was doing supernatural things in the first century to these people, from whom we have this record and this testimony of these supernatural occurrences. But the animals didn't want that. They never want that. They never want a God they can't see. They want a God they can put in a box and say, this is God. And the God of Christianity has remained the same since its inception, because it's not real, because it's not really God. It's man's version of what man wanted God to be, the same as the Israelites and their calf. There's nothing genuine about it. It's just what the humans wanted. And they created it for themselves. And that's what they have. They have their God. It was all explained in here. Their interpretation of what these words say about Him. In all their life, they know what He's about. They know how He acts. And as long as no one rocks the boat, then everyone is acceptable. As long as no one's a threat to their precious God, then they're acceptable. They're accepted. The power is in their agreement. The animals agreed about their aversion of the God they wanted to create, because they couldn't handle a God they couldn't control. They never can. They never will. They only want a God they can agree about. And that's their power. The power is in finding that agreement. That's what makes their God real to them. Establishing their own version of God, and then finding others who will agree with them about that version. And then that God becomes real to them. The same as the calf. And they like that. Because they can control that. This is the only way God ever acts. It's all here. If it jives with these words, then it's okay. If it doesn't, it's not okay. The words don't mean anything, though. How you assign meaning to the words means something. And that collective set of assigned meanings can vary from one group to another about what's real about God, about the only real God. But they all read from this same book. And they all say different things. So, we don't know what's been created. Because it's unseen, it's unexplained.